Jim Mecir had a right place, right time kind of career, and getting to the big leagues would be a harder journey than most. Born with clubfoot, he beat the odds and was drafted by the Seattle Mariners in 1991. After several seasons in the team's farm system, he eventually got called up in 1995, the Mariners' first year in the postseason, and perhaps the year that saved baseball in Seattle. A native New Yorker, Mecir came to the Yankees in an offseason trade and helped the Bronx Bombers kick off their championship dynasty. In 1998, he was on the opening day roster for the Tampa Bay Devil Rays, who played their first ever game on March 31st. Mecir would lead the team in games pitched that season. A couple of years later, he was sent to Oakland and was a key member of the Moneyball Athletics in 2002. A team that didn't have the spending means of other big market teams, Mecir and the rest of his squad proved that the best teams don't have to be bought. He wrapped up his 11-year Major League career with the Florida Marlins in 2005. And now he spends his time as a motivational speaker. Today, he's speaking to me about his incredible journey here on Touching Base.
Hey Mike, how you doing?
Hey, Jim, how are you, buddy?
Good.
Oh, pleasure's all mine, man. Thanks for doing this on a Sunday morning.
No problem. I just hope this Wi-Fi
The,
holds up. I don't know
the
what's going
Wi-Fi,
on.
we'll see what happens. I've had my own issues in the past. I interviewed Kip Gross a few interviews ago, and my whole camera crapped out, so I had to buy a new one. So stuff happens. It's totally fine. I'll try to get you through it as quickly as possible. But you've got such a great story, man. It's almost like a Forrest Gump kind of career. You were on a bunch of different teams at such significant points in those teams' histories. But let's start from the beginning. How did you come to love the game of baseball, and how did you find out you were such a great pitcher, and how did you find out about that great screwball of yours? That's so historic.
Well, the baseball thing, I can't remember not having a glove on. So I just grew up throwing things and playing baseball. So that was just like just a natural thing for me to do. I didn't realize how good I was going to be until much later because I was born with club foot. I was also a smaller kid until um, my junior year of high school. So I guess there was no pressure really. It wasn't like, oh my God, he's going to be a big leaguer. It was just like, oh, he plays baseball well. So um, that I think made it a lot easier to become a baseball player because I never really thought anything like that was going to happen until my senior year. Scouts started coming around because I started throwing 10 miles an hour harder than I did the previous year. The screwball happened in college, and that's because of my bad mechanics because of my leg. My slider and curveball weren't very good, so I watched my pitching coach. His name was Rich Folkers. He was a former big leaguer, and he was teaching a lefty how to throw it. So on the side, I was just sneakily doing it myself, and it became the pitch that I was able to throw well.
That's awesome. So you mentioned that you had club foot. How difficult is that, not only physically but mentally to overcome? Can you get down on yourself, or was it something that you found wasn't as hard to overcome as people might think?
I think it's when you're a child, you don't know any better. So I had a operation when I was one, so obviously I didn't know about that. But everything went well until I was about 8. My foot started uh, turning in again, and I was walking in a ball in my foot, so I needed to have surgery. And after that, kids are pretty resilient. I could still do things. I just know that things changed. So, I like playing hockey, but I can no longer skate because if I put skates on, my ankle would
Right.
collapse and I couldn't do it. Basketball is tough because those movements were a little tough on my knees and my ankles, and my parents and my doctors wouldn't let me play football. So baseball was pretty much the one that I could excel at and still do. And I wouldn't say that it was a problem. My body just mechanically did the things that it could do to throw the ball accurately and hard. It wasn't until later on where I grew and I got older where other things started breaking down because it was compensating for that leg.
Right, right. Well, you end up getting drafted by the Mariners in 1991. You finally make the team. You work your way through the farm system, through the ranks in the farm system, make the team in 1995. Probably the most historic year for the Mariners in franchise history. Um, you made your debut against the Yankees at Yankee Stadium, What was it like to finally get the call? Do you remember where you were when you got the call? And being a native New Yorker, what was it like to make your debut in the Bronx?
So I got the call, and I believe we were AAA Tacoma Rainiers, the last game of the season in Edmonton, and my manager said, "You're going to the big leagues," and he goes, "Oh, just kidding." And then he goes, "No, I'm not." So I got the call. I don't pitch for the first 4 days, and then we get to New York, and literally I wasn't sleeping or eating hardly because I was so nervous.
Yeah, how can you?
And then I think it was September 4th of that year. I'm in the bullpen and we're getting killed early, and I'm like, this is probably I better get ready because this is going to be it. And I get the call, and I'm in that bullpen, and I'm throwing the ball all over the place. I'm nervous, and then as soon as that gate opens up, everything went away. I just remember it being a beautiful day, walking out, seeing Yankee Stadium on the field, and then got on the mound and was kind of at peace. It was just, I guess it was like a fan playing the game. I'm like, I'm facing Don Mattingly and all these Yankees. Who cares? I'm just going to try to throw strikes and enjoy this.
Yeah, and not to mention no earned runs. You struck out Paul O'Neill and Tony Fernandez. Those guys were no slouches. So yeah, all else said, you had a great debut. But
It
next year
was
you
also
actually,
family. Oh, sorry, family and friends were there too, and I grew up in New York, so it was like the dream you have as a child. What I did, so it was unbelievable. That's probably you never want to say that's the highlight of your career because it was the first game, but I can't imagine anything else was better than that.
well, you always remember the first, and your family was there. So how can you forget a moment like that? And you did well that day. Um, so the next year you get traded in an off-season trade to the Yankees in the same trade that brought Tino Martinez and Jeff Nelson to the Bronx. Um, how pumped up? I don't know if you were a Yankees fan growing up as a kid, but how pumped up were you to be able to play for a New York team for 2 years in your major league career?
Well, that one was bittersweet. I was a Yankee fan, so it was unbelievable getting traded there and putting on the pinstripes. There's no doubt about it. And they won the World Series in '96. But for any rookie that's not, a superstar, it's tough to start in a place like that because they're just looking to win, right away. So I was sent up and down 7 times in 2 years. Strawberry or Rob, who was on the DL.
Yep.
Didn't matter how I was doing, I got sent up and down. And it's a tough lesson. I learned a lot of lessons because, you know, I try to be perfect because, if I don't give up runs, they can't send me down. At that time, it really wasn't that true. So I had to learn a lot of tough lessons in order to, start become the pitcher that I want to once I left New York.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's tough because New York is it's the most scrutinous market out there, and you have to live up to the hype, and you're always in the spotlight, so it's tough. But you did well there, and then in 1998, um, Florida gets its second big league team in 5 or 6 years. The Marlins came to be in '93, and then it was the Devil Rays in 1998. You were on the opening day roster, the first ever. You played in the first ever game for the Devil Rays. I think it was March 31st of that year. What was the hype like in Tampa that year? Was Tampa a cool place to be in the spring of 1998?
Well, for me, I'm going to say that's my favorite team to play for, and it was just because I was given the opportunity. And I came out. Larry Rothschild was the manager, and he told me even before spring training games started, he said, "Listen, we don't have a lot of experience. You've been in the big leagues for a little bit. You're going to be on the team. We don't know where it is, so I just want you to go out there and do whatever you can to get better, and don't worry about runs given up or anything like that." And that was probably the greatest gift I was ever given. I went out there and tried all different stuff, did things that coaches told me in the past I shouldn't do, and I found out the pitcher I wanted to be and became a good reliever for that team and really enjoyed my stay there. I mean, if we could have won, that would have been a lot better. But as far as the hype, I don't know if there was really hype. It was just a great atmosphere to be around, and you kind of knew we weren't going to go out and win right away. I mean, we had a lot of young guys or guys that have been in the big leagues for a while, but they're at the tail end of their career.
Yep.
And,
Yep.
we picked up some good power hitters. The hit show, but you have to have a lot of
Griff,
other pieces,
Canseco, yeah.
right? But we didn't have, I guess the starting rotation. We didn't think we had the bullpen. We ended up having a really good bullpen, but you need a lot of pieces. You can't just throw a team together right away and win.
I always think of the '62 Mets. It took them, because I'm a Mets fan, so I know their history, but it took them, 7 years to finally turn their team around. 120 losses in that first year. So every time I think of an expansion team, I kind of go back to them. But Tampa is a beautiful city. I've been there, and I'm sure it was a hell of a place to play baseball. So you spend another couple of years in Tampa. Then you get, I believe, you get traded to the Athletics, and that's where history and a whole revolution really started in '02 with the Athletics, because that's when sabermetrics really started to kick off, at least to the public eye. Did you have any idea in '02 how revolutionary sabermetrics was, and how revolutionary the team would be? And did you have any idea what Billy Beane had up his sleeve at that point in time?
I had no idea, and I'm grateful that I didn't. I actually like Billy Beane. He was one of the most hands-on general managers I've ever had, and good guy. I am not a firm believer in what's going on today. I think the only reason why we can't argue it is because everybody's doing it. I think the book should have been called Hudson Zito and
Oh, who was the other
Mulder
guy?
Ball,
Mulder,
because
yeah.
when you get three starters like that, you have a chance of going to the playoffs. And we went to the playoffs 4 years in a row, didn't win. And to me, I believe that's the case because we couldn't manufacture runs. I understand what Billy was doing, trying to get the cheapest players, but getting on base. And the greatest thing out of that is I think he taught players that patience at the plate. Walking's not a bad thing. Stop swinging aggressively all the time. But now we kind of gone the opposite way. So that one's hard for me. I'm not a big fan of how baseball is now. I much prefer 15 years in the past.
Likewise, that's when my childhood was, and that's when I think the golden age of baseball was. Did you see the movie? Is it accurate? And were you at all mentioned in the movie? I believe you were mentioned a lot in the book, but were you at all mentioned in the movie? I saw it maybe 10 years ago, and I can't remember.
I was on the screen. It wasn't really a mention. Uh, the movie itself, they did a pretty good job. I mean, it was a little sad because a bunch of guys were supposed to go there and be in the movie, and then they sold it off, so we eventually weren't. But I guess the only couple of things that were off were, paying for soda, which I don't know why they even put that in there, which is weird. They made Art Howard's one of the greatest baseball guys in the game and a great guy, and they made him look like a jerk, so I didn't
Yeah,
appreciate that. And a couple of players, Hatterberg and Bradford, they went overboard in how they act a little bit, but for a sports movie, they did a really good job.
yeah, I enjoyed it thoroughly. So you finished your career with the Marlins in 2005, your 11-year major league career. Now you're a motivational speaker. Can you talk a little bit about who your audience is, and what your message is to the audience?
Yeah, it's changed over time. It was a lot about resiliency, a lot about, and now it's more about teamwork. Partner with somebody that does improv, and we're kind of making it more interactive um, to learn about that team building and leadership. And it's a lot of fun. People are a little scared of it, so it's a little tough sell. But when we do, people usually love it.
Oh, that's great. That's great. So I want to talk about the game today. I know you mentioned you don't like how it's played today compared to 15, 20 years ago, but are there any specific rule changes? I mean, this year was crazy with all the rule changes, and I know, the pitch clock would have affected you the most. I've interviewed a lot of pitchers at this point, and I always ask them about the pitch clock. So I'm going to ask you. I mean, is the pitch clock something that you would have liked because you like that go go go, kind of tempo, or do you think a pitcher should be able to take his time on the mound?
I'm a go 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 guy, so it wouldn't have really affected me except for the pickoffs. The two you could get, I guess, what is it? You get two pickoff rules. That is a little weird to me, but the timing is good because I couldn't stand when guys were sitting in the box and fiddling around, calling timeout. So that part wouldn't bother me. Um, and funny, I'm a pitcher. The DH does not bother me. I couldn't stand watching National League games and in the fourth, fifth inning, bases low, and
Really?
here comes the pitcher, and it's just a mess. So that doesn't bother me. Um, I'm actually a fan of the bigger bases just because the players are stealing bases more, and I guess
It's
maybe
more
it's also
exciting.
the
Yeah.
clock. So, that's not bad. Getting rid of the shift, I think, is absolutely ridiculous. Big league hitters should be able to make adjustments, and that really pisses me off. That's ridiculous, and I don't think some of these guys should have careers that now it's all sudden back and they just get to pull a ball and people can't play where they want to play. So
Yeah.
that's a little silly. And the extra innings thing is ridiculous. It feels like I'm a little kid, like playing in the backyard. All right, automatic runner on
Yeah.
second. So,
Yep. Oh, I'm
um,
right there with you with that. But yeah, a
and
lot of
even
these new
even the
rules.
players, the players, the fact that they and fans don't mind it when they over celebrate and they do it, and I think they're showing guys up. I think it's disrespectful. I don't think
Yeah.
it's having
Yeah.
fun.
I agree.
I think, tell you the truth, and I don't care what people say. If somebody said, "What if they did that to you?" and say, "Well, I'm throwing inside. I'm throwing at him," and they'll get mad and say, "Well, you could ruin a career." I'm like, "No, I didn't." The person that's got to celebrate and get attention, that's their problem.
Yeah. Yeah. You can celebrate for yourself without having to show the other person up. And the other thing about these new rules, they enable you not to, or they don't allow you to strategize. If you're only allowed to throw over 3 times or whatever the rule is now, well, I mean, they're inhibiting you from optimizing your strategy in the game. And it's the other things don't make sense. The automatic runner on second base, I mean, how do you count that? Do you count it against the pitcher? Do you not count it? None of it just negates how baseball is played. And I say that over and over again to all these guys I talk to, but it's just I wish it would go back to when I was a kid, and the only big rule changes that happened then were the interleague play and the wild card, and it
And those
wasn't
were
for that.
good.
And those
And
were
those were
good
really
ones.
good
Those were
because
fun.
now you have more teams and more people get
Yeah, and
excited
it
because
wasn't
their teams in
overdone.
it.
I think if they upped it now that they've upped it to 12, it's like I don't like the bye week in the playoffs. I figure if you're going to up it to 12, make it 16, make it an even amount for everybody. But they're trying to make it more like basketball or football, and trying to make it more interesting and have more fans be involved that late in the year. It ultimately comes down to money. So the
Right. And I don't
enjoyment
think they're getting more fans. I think they're just pissing off
they're
old fans.
pissing off the current fans.
If you don't like baseball, you don't like it. Making all these rules, I don't think is going to change that fact. So I think it's making it worse. I don't think it's making it better.
Yeah, yeah. Do you have a favorite team? Do you have any players you're kind of keeping your eye on this year? Anybody who excites you? Any teams you think are going to make the playoffs?
I kind of look. I haven't watched the game this year. I go on the internet, kind of look, see where the teams are.
That's
Obviously,
kind of what I do. Yeah,
every team that I played for, I want to win, and of course the Yankees. I'm always going to want to win just because as a kid, and even the Mets because I liked them until everybody jumped on their bandwagon in the early '80s. But uh, yeah, I don't. It's just very irritating me. When the playoffs come, I tend to watch a lot of the games and get involved, but I think also baseball's 162 games, so it's not like football. So you don't feel like you got to catch
no, you
everything. You can
start
just say,
watching when it matters. Yeah, closer to
right,
the
I could catch it tomorrow. I could catch it.
yeah,
But I think the one thing about the rule change that I don't know if they really thought about is if I'm going to a baseball game, I don't want it to be a lot shorter. You got to drive there, prepare, all that. So
yeah.
I wouldn't want the game to be shorter. I'd want it to be what it's
Get your
supposed to be.
money's worth.
Right. So I don't know what fans are really thinking about that.
Yeah, I don't either. But this is the first year of it. I don't know if this stigma is ever going to go away or fans are going to get used to it. But we'll see. I guess baseball is ever changing now. But so that's all
Well,
I
I
got,
don't
man. I
know.
just say again.
Exit velocity and launch angle. When I was playing, if the ball went over the fence, it had a high exit. I mean, launch angle, and if it whistled by my head, then it had good exit velocity. I think that's all nonsense. It makes no sense.
Yeah, I mean, if it goes over the fence, it goes. Who cares what the exit velocity was? A
Yeah,
home
it's
run is a home
ridiculous.
run. They're throwing all these stats at you that it's too much. It's
But
overload.
they're worthless stats. They don't even mean anything because you could get
Yeah,
a base hit with no exit velocity, swinging bunt.
it's an excuse to put a graphic on the screen. That's
Yeah.
really all it is. But listen, Jim, thanks so much for doing this, man. I appreciate your time. I love your story. I'm happy that you're a motivational speaker now, and we'll stay in touch, my friend. I really do appreciate the time and getting to know you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks for having me.
All right, man. Take care. Thanks, Jim. Bye bye.
Bye.